Hello, everyone. Welcome to Athenaeum. Athenium. Um, Athenaeum? I'm Rob.
I'm Jake.
And I'm Sam. Welcome to a conversation about writing, literature, and the culture that feeds them. uh,
What are we
so
talking
I
about
think
today?
today, well, you're the one who brought up the subject for today.
Yeah, but it's
So,
traditional for you to introduce it at this point.
oh, okay, I'll introduce it. So today we're actually going to be talking about a few episodes of the Netflix TV series Love, Death, and Robots. And the reason we're talking about this, whether or not people know, is that these shorts, because are all based on written shorts. So, which makes it, based on literature. So, yeah, look at that. Ah,
For the
um,
record, I did not know that these were based on books when I started watching.
shorts. They're all based on short stories. I don't think any of them are based on a book. They're all based on a short story, which actually
Fiction.
brings me to before we even talk about the episodes we watched, which were great episodes. Mr. Jake, don't
Mm.
most of these follow the route that you hate where they don't have like a satisfying ending?
Well, that's an interesting point. Um, I would say most of them are kind of semi-satisfying endings. Uh, it's more that they address at least a question you have or throughout the story, and so you end reasonably satisfied. But there are a couple that have had very unsatisfying endings, to me at least. I don't think you guys have watched the specific one I'm thinking of yet, but we could discuss the ones you have watched,
I
which are.
apologize for any cat noises in the background.
Don't worry, they're quite cute. Um, so which episodes have you guys watched?
Okay. Rob, do you want to start? And then I can go through the ones I've watched.
Sure. So I watched, tragically, out of order, Sonny's Revenge? Or-
Edge.
I forget what it's called. Um, The Rise of
Sonny's
Yogurt.
Edge.
Okay, Sonny's Edge.
When the
Um,
yogurt took over.
Something about yogurt. Uh,
No, you were right with when the yogurt took over. That was right.
No, I said that, and
oh, is
then
that what it's
because
called?
Rob was saying it wrong. I have the
I
episode lists here, and Rob does not for some
okay.
reason.
The Rise of the Yogurt.
Yeah,
Uh,
close enough.
Star Wars. Um, I watched Ice Age.
Hmm.
Oh, and that's it.
I
No,
thought you.
also
Okay.
I watched Three Robots.
Yep.
Yep. Yep. Okay, so I watched, and I'll actually go in the order that I watched them in. Three Robots, Suits, The Witness, Sucker of Souls, which, by the way, when you watch these on Netflix, they do not play them in order either.
Mm.
Not only do is Netflix in a different order than other lists, but they play them out of their own order. So Sucker of Souls, Sunny's Edge, and then I watched Ice Age as well.
Yep. Um.
It's not
So I've prepared kind of slides for Sunny's Edge, but we could talk about the other ones that you both have watched as well.
okay. Um,
What do you
well,
guys think
Sunny's
start with?
Edge. I'm okay with starting with Sunny's Edge.
Cool.
Start.
So,
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, I was going to be more organized for this, but my power went out twice in a row because somebody was using an old toaster on the same circuit.
Wow.
that's why it was going out.
Yeah, it's a bit unfortunate. Either way.
It's kind of funny.
So,
Like, are you hooked up to like windmill power? An old toaster ruined your power?
yeah, yeah, I
Are
definitely
you
am.
relying on
Definitely am.
gerbils?
Oh man,
No. He's just in an old house. Come on. He's just in an old house.
that
I'm
is
guessing a
definitely true.
Very
house
old
It's
house.
like
from
7
like
years
the
old now.
70s.
Yeah.
Wait, did you say 7 or 70?
70 years old now.
Yeah, okay. Okay, yeah, that's an old house. It's
Yeah.
forgiven.
Sheesh.
Okay.
um,
So I have some slides up, so we could do a plot synopsis if we want first.
you want to handle the plot synopsis, mister?
Sure, since I have the slides. So
Alright.
the short begins with what I thought was slightly too long establishing shot of kind of a grungy looking city with lots of neon lights and a truck pulling into some warehouse looking place. Then it comes into a inside this warehouse with a container that the camera spends a lot of time on, noticeably, and with the characters flanking it. After this, these characters are interrupted in their apparently routine tasks by a fancy-looking gentleman and a woman beside him in a golden dress. She doesn't say anything during this encounter and appears to be kind of just following him, almost a little bit lost. And he offers them a deal to throw their fight in order to gain a large cash prize. And during this scene, the three characters that we're following wholeheartedly refuse, and it's kind of implied that it's for pride reasons. You know, they wouldn't sink to the depths of throwing a fight. And one of the characters, who is not the main character, says that it was the reason the fight is so important is because the main character was abused, and this is their way to get back at people for that. And so the man and the woman leave in disgust, and the fight begins. The main character, a woman, sits down in front of this arena, and they appear to be plugging into these monsters that they can control telekinetically. And then a man comes in and is very excitedly posturing and declaring how he's going to win. He has a large, giant rock golem kind of creature. Is very strong looking, very tanky, and she has this kind of agile reptilian snake-like beast with a.
I would compare it to like the alien creatures from
Yep.
the Alien series.
Yep. I have slides. Hopefully they help. The fight starts out in the female creatures are let's say what should I refer to them as? The woman and the man, or the main character and the antagonist?
Fine.
I'll do that one. So the fight starter and the main character's advantage. She gets a bunch of hits into the large tanking creature and appears to be dealing damage to it. But then she gets too cocky and it grabs onto her and does a little bit of damage in return. It's quite a nice fight, I would say. There's a lot of back and forth. From what I remember, you guys watched it more recently than me, so correct me if I'm wrong. But she does a little bit of damage to it, and then rips its hand off, right? And from the stump, a blade emerges made out of bone, which he uses to cut off her head tendril things. Then the rock creature grabs her and pushes her against the wall and stabs her in the stomach with the blade. And the scene is played up like she's lost. And to the audience, since these are just avatars, we kind of go. We don't know which way it could go. There's no inevitability of the protagonist winning because of the fact that they're avatars, and so there's a bit of tension there. Oh, and I got some slides of their reactions. So the main character's human body is completely impassive and unreacting, whereas the other men, when the tides are turned by the female's beast plunging its sharp head into its chest and splitting it in half, he grimaces in pain. So there's a small hint at something that comes up later there. Then, uh, clutching its stomach in pain, the female creature rips off the enemy's head and stands in victory. Um, so afterwards, there is a scene back in the room where the monsters are held, where the woman from earlier in the gold comes and seduces the main character, and it's I think me and Rob predicted this. I don't know about you, Sam, but we found it quite obvious that she was about to betray her, and so she does, stabbing blades from out of her fist, almost like Wolverine, into the protagonist's head. And as she's clutching for breath, the old man comes in from earlier and gloats that you should have thrown the fight. Now we're going to punish you. What is it? What is it like to feel fear, or something very villainy
Mhm.
along those lines? But then it is revealed that the main character did not recover well from her abuse, and in fact, this human body is not her real body. The monster is her real body, and she bursts out of the tank that she's in and kills the intruders, leaving her human body dead on the floor.
Ba, ba, ba.
Wow, that that recap was almost as long as the episode itself.
It was actually. They're quite short.
They are very short. Um, I figured she was gonna betray her somehow. I just wasn't quite sure what was gonna be
Yeah,
happening.
I guess the
Um,
fact that it was blades out of her hands was a little bit surprising, but
yes, how she did it was very much a surprise.
mm,
Oh, and then also what her edge was. I actually didn't see that was her edge
yeah.
coming.
So the short's called Sonnie's Edge, in case anyone forgot. Yeah, there are a few little things that it ties into. There's originally the side character describes it as, she's putting her everything on the line, and she there was another thing, wasn't there, that was part of it, right? She she described something more specific, I thought, but I can't remember.
Well, she'd been like gang raped or something.
Right. Well, either way, this side character describes how she's, you know, pouring her passion
Hmm.
or anger based on that into it, and that's why she has an edge. And oh, seems like Rob's having issues. Hello.
I don't. What the?
There you are.
You said there was another thing that happened, right? And I said, "What do you mean?" And then I just heard nothing else.
Right. Right. Just cut out as usual. Oh well. Um. Yeah, and then once the monster is revealed, there's a number of like sharp edges and blade-like attachments to it, which could be referenced by the title. And
Mhm.
then once the show finishes, it's revealed that that in fact her actual life is on the line when she fights,
Bum,
which
bum, bum.
would of course make you fight a little bit harder.
Yeah. One of the things that I've been doing as I watch these is I have been ranking like the ones that go for closer to the true realism in their
Mm.
animation. I have been ranking them. This one
Yep.
is not at the bottom. I actually like the animation of it quite a bit. I think Rob and I talked about this as I was watching it. The fact that he pointed out the fact that it starts out so dark probably helps that.
Mm. Set your
Um,
expectations low, eh?
No, no, no. It makes it harder to see the details.
Yeah, yeah. Well, uh,
Yeah.
that's a tangent I don't know if we want to get into, but there's
No, no.
some
It
interesting
was more
facts about
just
compression and dark lighting.
yeah.
Um,
This is based off a short by Peter F. Hamilton that came out in 1996, um, called, and it's an anthology called A Second Chance at Eden.
hmm,
So,
interesting.
that apparently the anthology also takes place in the same world and spans about 500 years.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Well, this one was quite entertaining, so perhaps we could check that out sometime in the future.
The summary for it says context of larger fictional universe, the story of gruesome duels between beasts mentally controlled by humans makes reference to the affinity gene that allows for mental bonding.
Mm.
So
Well, I think it would be interesting for us to kind of give a rough rating of how we liked this episode.
oh.
Just,
Are we
ma-
doing the 1 out of 5? Is that what we're doing?
well, I
One
don't
out
know.
of 10.
I don't tend to like those, but I think they are
I,
kind of useful because they're easy to understand.
I'll give it a 5 wolves out of 5.
5 out of 5, eh?
5 wolves out of 5.
Hmm. I'm trying to think. Like
the,
there's a lot of
the
things I
reason
like more, but I can't see much that they could have done better. So yeah, I'd probably agree that mm,
exactly, and like I think it's one of those where it's a short story.
hmm
It's a short story that, and this is one of the ones that really does have a kind of a really solid concluding end
yeah,
of,
yeah, I'll
you
give
know,
it that.
this is what her edge is.
Yeah, it nicely ties up
Um,
all of the questions that it poses, which is
mhm.
good.
And I think that the animation style they went for kind of, because there were some a little bit more downtime in this one compared to the other shorts. But the animation style, they went with that grungy style, kind of leans itself towards having, some quiet moments where it's just subtle looks around and,
Mm,
the movement of the characters. So I liked it.
yep. How about you, Rob?
Mr. Raub.
Well, I'd say five cats out of
Out of
one
6, right?
meow. No, actually, I would give it a 4 out of 5.
Mm,
Just because the whole story. I mean, while it was entertaining, something that I sort of mildly don't prefer. I wouldn't say I outright dislike it. Is
mm,
when you have a whole a whole story set up to show like one thing, right?
Yeah.
This whole story is set up basically to show that she's the monster, and that's hinted at in the title, right? Sonny's Edge.
mm,
Here's this one thing that we're gonna take 16 minutes to tell you. Uh,
mm,
so if there was more of a legitimate narrative there, I would give it 5 stars. I did think it was super interesting, but just that one sort of pointlessness of it is what I'm gonna knock down the star for.
mm,
Because you could have just said, "Hey, Sonny's Edge, show me the opening shots," and then say, "No, we're not gonna throw the fight. Our girl is the monster." And the guy's like, well then. And then that's the end of the episode.
mm.
The same things would have happened, except for the rich guy would still be alive.
True. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, that's fair. That's very fair. I think. Well, and then one of the things that I always take into consideration when I'm doing a review is I always ask myself who would like this and who would not like this.
Mm.
If you want romance or comedy, you would hate this. I think if you like horror, if you like gritty, realistic stories, and I think if you like science fiction, you'd probably like
Yeah,
this.
and
Uh,
the fight scene was quite entertaining actually. So action
mhm.
is.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's
Yes.
you're probably not used to using that word for books as much.
Action adventure is definitely one I do a lot, especially like pirate.
Yeah.
If you like pirate stuff.
Hmm, okay. Yeah. So we had a little discussion before, and we noticed a few things that could be potentially improved. Rob, do you remember what it was?
So I remember what I said.
Go on.
Uh, so I said, touching back on the reason that I gave it 4 stars, it's just because there wasn't a whole lot of narrative weight to the twist, which is that the woman is the monster, and her
Yeah,
womanly body is sort of just a mechanical shell, I guess.
yeah, it wasn't really hinted at all once it was established that, they make a mental link with the monster.
Well,
Um,
that's interesting because as I was showing the slides, I well, as I was getting the slides, I realized that there were actually hints about it.
oh.
So, for example, the the side character describes the reason for her edge, and it is implied through the main character's uh, the, the the way they're behaving and the looks they give that it's not the whole truth at the very least.
Mm-hmm.
Is the first clue. There's a more subtle clue, which is the exaggerated emphasis upon the tank that the monster's in the
Mm-hmm.
establishing shots, which I guess I think I'm not particularly versed in screenwriting or whatever, but I think it was in the place where you would normally show your main character and introduce them, which could have been a subtle clue to some people, but not to us, obviously.
Yeah.
Uh, the best
We
clue,
failed that test.
yeah, the best clue narratively is there was a scene uh, where it was showing the reactions of the humans to the fight, and so at first it showed her reaction to her monster, well, as we find out later, her getting damaged, and there was none. It was like,
Yeah, I do remember seeing that. She had no reaction, but the other guy was like actually reacting.
yep, yep, and
Yeah.
so uh, that's an interesting thing where you show the one that's wrong first, and then you show the correct one, and that means that technically the information to predict the outcome is there, but there's no way for the audience to know that because they would have assumed that the first one you showed is the norm or the correct event. In most cases, so that's an interesting little piece of evidence there.
Mm-hmm.
That is an interesting point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe something I
What
can
I mean,
think of when in my writing. Go ahead.
m- maybe. What I mean, actually, and I thought that you were alluding to my initial thoughts on it,
Mm,
is that okay? So you have this story, right?
mm,
And you have basically the whole premise is that this girl is a monster, and that she
mm-hmm.
fights to get back at the world, right?
I
But
I feel like,
everyone else is thinking that she is.
yeah.
What'd you say?
Oh, I was just making sure what you meant by monster, because in this you could be talking about the literal monster, or you could be talking about the ethical sense.
Come on, Jake. I'm talking about the actual
Okay, just checking, just checking.
monster. Um, she is a creature of some kind,
Hmm.
and she, she's getting back at the world. And Sonny's edge. Firstly, I will say that I wasn't really like asking that question, but
Mm.
it kept coming up like that's not what gives me my edge,
Yep.
or this, that, and the other. It's well, I wasn't too concerned what gave Sunny her edge. I guess I didn't really understand what that meant.
Right.
Do you mean like her advantage, or do you mean like her drive, her her will. I didn't know.
Mm.
But what I took from the story that I was given was that this whole story was created to show this premise, right?
Mhm.
Now, the reason that I dislike that is because, excuse me, is because when you have a whole story that could be, that could be resolved by the answering of like one question,
Mm.
then you may as well just answer that question. You don't really have a story. What you have is a long series of hypotheticals, basically. Uh,
Well, I'm going to challenge you here because what what's a story that isn't that? You know, how is a
okay,
normal story that you like different?
let me say it like this,
Mhm.
because I think you'll find that pretty much every story that anybody likes is different.
Mm.
Um, if you can skip to the ending and have no questions, then you didn't really have a story. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Well,
So I'll say this. Rob's point is something that I apply to novels I read.
mm.
With when a novel isn't catching my attention and it's just a drag to go through, I will skip ahead to the ending, and if it's an ending I could have predicted, or like nothing in the middle is important at all to the resolution,
Yep.
that's usually when I will put the novel away. But at the same time, you do have other books that are very, very predictable, but they are enjoyable not because they answer the starting question. They're enjoyable because of the journey that the characters go through.
Mhm.
And I think for this one, it's a short story, and the journey is honestly the battle.
Yep.
Like
Yeah,
the battle, and I think that I don't. I think this is a one of the anthologies that, to Rob's point, could have been shorter. It didn't need to be a 20-minute episode one.
Mhm. Yeah.
yeah, and that's what I'm saying is that it was well done. I did like it, and I'm not really knocking it for not having a whole lot of subtext or a whole lot of story or anything.
Yeah.
But I do think that your story is going to be inherently worse the longer that you drag out a simple plot like that. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Oh, the funny thing is, I agree with you, but the way you were saying it was kind of questionable. The
Well,
first
that's
time.
why I tried to clarify.
Yeah.
It's easy to say it to myself because I already know what I mean, but saying
Yeah.
it to
Yeah.
other people is, yeah.
Because, for example, you phrased it as if the question could have been like the story could have been resolved right at the start by somebody just saying a different piece of information, and that's not exactly true because it's not stated, but you could easily make the assumption that she wants to hide this fact from as many people as possible, which is why her friend at least appears not to know the truth, and she kills the two people who find out about it. So,
I, I think because you were going back over what the friend said, I think the
mhm,
friend knows.
yeah,
I do I do think the friend knows because, and she even says this, when they're attempting to murder her, that it wasn't the act of raping her
mm,
that gave her edge. It's the fact that they tried to kill her and destroyed her body to a point where they had to transfer her consciousness into
mm,
the monster.
yeah.
And the
Yeah.
body only barely survived. So I think the friend knows.
I guess just
Um,
logistically, it makes sense that she would, because how else would the process have happened? Yes, but
yeah, yeah,
I got the
exactly.
impression from the way the friend was acting that she didn't know.
Well, in
Oh,
hindsight, I think it makes sense.
mm,
Well, this is what I thought you were saying when you said that she is, she was kind of just going off on the guy. And at the time, I'm thinking like, man, all right, we get it. You're not gonna throw the fight. You don't have to be such a rude person about it.
yeah.
But
Oh, yeah. I found
in
that weird as well.
hindsight, it does make the context does make sense because you're basically asking her to die so that she can get paid, which
Yeah,
makes no sense.
yeah. Well, that kind of leads us into some other things we thought were a little bit weak with the show. The first was the relatability of the characters, and the
Hmm.
second was the tightness of the writing. That was what I was originally actually trying to prompt you towards, Rob, was the
Okay,
tightness that you
so
brought up earlier.
the tightness.
Do you know what I
Hmm.
mean by that?
Why don't you elaborate just elucidate me?
Well, what you said was that you found it a bit. I just realized the reason why they couldn't do this, but I'll go into the point anyway. What you said was that it was a shame that they didn't make the threat that she defeats in the end, the people who wanted to throw the fight and uh, ambush her, and that she reveals the monster to before killing. You said that it would have been more uh, eloquent. I don't know if those people were the abusers or related to
Oh,
the abusers.
yeah. Okay. So what I was saying is that the narrative weight of the twist was subdued because these were just. I mean, I don't. They probably weren't strangers. I'm sure that these guys knew the rich guy and his servant to some degree,
Mm,
but they weren't related to her becoming the monster, right?
mm-hmm,
So the revelation that she is the monster, uh, while the story that they laid out is totally fine. Obviously, not everybody the person meets is going to be related to her, her tragedy that happened to her, that trauma. But when you just have this one off short, and we're probably maybe not going to see this character again, then yeah, if it was the example that I proposed was if this was the gang
mm,
that had abused her and caused such physical trauma that she literally could not exist in her body anymore.
mm-hmm.
If they had maybe taken her friend, one of her, I don't know what they actually did, one of her pit crew, and they're like, well, she goes to confront them, and they're like, well, how about this, little sad girl that we already destroyed? Why don't you fight us for her? And if the revelation then after she bested you know the champion fighter of that gang,
Mm,
if they then found out that they had damaged her to the point that she became the monster, but now as the monster she is stronger than all of them, that would have been super satisfying, I think.
mm,
And that was what was kind of lacking from the whole twist of Sonny's edge, is because I wasn't really asking myself that question. I wasn't, oh, what is Sonny's edge? What drives her? I frankly, I didn't think that it was a question that was going to be resolved. I thought it was just a title. And
mm.
then they brought it up at the end. They're like, "You want to know what gives me my edge?" I was like, "Well, I wasn't thinking about it, but I guess since you brought it up, you may as well tell me."
Yeah,
And so that, I suppose that you
yeah,
could say that could have been done better. I don't think it was done poorly, but it could have been done better.
yeah. There was uh, a noticeable lack of like emotional payoff to the plot.
Yeah.
So I think, and
And
I
that would
think
have had the consequence of making the characters more relatable as well.
potentially, although I think oftentimes relatability is very closely tied to just specifically the first scene you see. I think it's
Oh,
more
I
difficult
want to get
to.
into that later.
Yeah, well, I think we could do it now, unless Sam wants to butt in with anything.
Um,
What did you think of Rob's alternate story? Because
I think it would have been an interesting one. But one of the things that it seems like they're doing with this TV series is that they're sticking quite close to the original story.
yeah,
Um, and I think that's kind of where you and I differ from Rob in that we're kind of rating it. At least for me, I'm including in why I gave it 5 out of 5 is I think it's very close to the story, to what it's based on.
Yep.
And and at that point, I think it's more than a movement of criticism to the short story, which is fine. Not necessarily the episode itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I guess we
And
should
you know, it's funny.
mean,
It's
our ratings between those
if
two.
I had read the short story, then I might have another reason to give it that extra star because maybe it was written in such a spectacular way that
well, like, because
I don't
like
know.
I said,
I
there's a
haven't read it.
couple on here, a couple of shorts episodes on here that I have read the short stories for. That is not one of them. And I think what it does make me want to do is it makes me want to go read the rest of the stories that are set in that world because honestly, oh yeah, she's been, transplanted into the monster. The interesting thing to me in that is how would that have been possible? Like what goes on in that world where that's a thing that you can do? And is it something in the genes? Is it just a technology thing? Like, so I have a feeling that maybe that one got picked for from the anthology because it can just stand on its own so easily, and it does make for a good little like horror episode, right?
Yep. I think
but
also
that I
it
don't think
has.
it's necessarily the most interesting one.
I think
in
it also
there.
has probably the highest animation quality of the series,
Yes. Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
Well,
important to show off early on, I would say.
Yeah.
let me say one more thing to the point that was brought up before by Sam. Actually, I did I did halfway catch this. It was very quickly and vaguely implied that Sonnie is, I think her consciousness is actually in whatever mechanism allows her body to control the monster.
Yeah.
Because there's just a single scene in which between her body dying and before the monster appearing, when she's confronting Dicko, uh, her voice comes through a speaker.
Yeah.
And so, to me, in hindsight, now that I've had more time to think about it, that kind of tells me that whatever like link between whatever medium she uses between her body and the monster, whatever's in the middle there, is what Sonnie actually is what I think is going on.
So maybe she can only link to the one monster though, and so she has to somehow like balance the existence.
I doubt that
Could
that's the
be.
case because that would completely undermine the kind of purpose of the story.
Well,
The point is that it's her real self on the line when she's fighting.
then riddle me this, Jake. How did the monster speak through a speaker?
Well, if the link can control an entire human body, why could it not output a human voice from a speaker?
Why could it?
But
If the link is bonded to a human body, how is it also bonded to a speaker?
well,
That is
You're a
that is an
technology guy.
interesting point.
How does that work, Jake? Go ahead and tell me the programming behind that.
I think he walked you in a quarter.
It's like a Bluetooth speaker. If you turn off the normal one, it'll just automatically connect to a different one.
Oh, so she just blue jacked a random speaker while her body was dying.
It's not
But her body
random.
was actually the monster.
It's directly
It was pretty
associated
random.
with the tank it was in.
Ah,
So there is
was it?
easy precedent for why that makes sense.
Easy precedent. I don't know if I would call it easy. Maybe there is precedent. I wouldn't call it easy. I might just have to watch it again.
Well,
though.
so let's back out of the weeds a little bit.
And do you want to get any ticks?
But I think I feel one thing with this story is I think this is more of a traditional short story, and I think of the episodes I've watched, they all fall into that more traditional short story where you get to the end, and with a novel like a standalone novel, you get to the end of the novel, and while it might be like mildly implied that these characters' lives continue on, it's
Mm.
not usually very open ended,
Yep.
right? Whereas a short story is very open ended, and I
Mm.
think this one follows that in that we get a lot of implied hints of the world and the setting, and that's where turning it into a TV episode gives it a big advantage because right, a short is very limited. It's a very short thing. They really have to get a lot of those subtle details into their writing, whereas here you get it from the visuals.
Yep.
The visuals in here really set up the world. And then the other place where it is definitely short is at the end. Yeah, she kills the guy who found out about her, but her body's gone, guys. Like, can they
That's a
fix it? Is she now, has she lost all human body?
Mm.
Like, what's going to happen now? That's the thing where to me that's what really makes this feel like the short story that it is,
Yep.
in that there's a lot of questions still, which is I think one of the things that is the point of short stories, despite what one of the folks out here enjoys reading.
Mm. Yeah, it's
Short stories.
Well, she did say that they destroyed her skull, which is
Yes.
specifically what these people also did to her.
Yeah.
So
Do you think that they can
maybe the
fix her?
rest of her
Maybe.
body is fine. Yeah, because
Yeah.
I mean, maybe her skull was never like
Hmm.
working in the first place. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, interesting.
I do
Like,
wonder if like why they wouldn't build like a metal skull or something that couldn't just be, stabbed through or stepped on.
true. True. Um.
More
But that is
expensive.
interesting.
On that note,
Yeah, they
should
don't
we
have enough money.
Mm.
should we talk about some of the other episodes that we watched? Because Rob and I both watched Three Robots,
Yep.
which was
Mm.
the first one that I watched. And I thought it has hands down been the funniest
It
I've
was
watched so
very
far.
funny.
It was so funny. Oh, look, guys, it's a sphere. It's a ball. It's a ball. What'd they do with it? Bounce it. Sometimes they'd hit it with a stick. Were they punishing the ball? Did the bad ball?
Yeah,
The
that one was
jokes in
quite
it.
good.
And the other thing I really liked about that one, and honestly, I liked it more than Sunny's Edge.
Mm.
And I liked that one more because it had the humor, but also it subverted your expectations all the way up until the last like 60 seconds. Because
Oh
right,
yeah.
they're going through humanity is gone, da 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 da. Say, and they keep hinting and explaining that it's because they ruined the environment, and they ended up killing themselves because of their technology and they couldn't control themselves.
Yep.
And then randomly you meet this cat. They're terrified of the cat. I love the exploding kittens reference
Yeah,
so
I
much,
did like that as well.
so much. And I'm actually looking at the novel where, or the anthology collection where this one is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, oh, sorry. The roommate just walked by. I don't know what he's doing.
Mm.
But it was published in. That's what I was trying to find. Is when it was published to see. It was published in 2018, guys. That short story
Right.
might actually
Yeah, that makes
reference
sense.
exploding kittens.
Mm.
Yeah.
um,
Which, in
but
case anyone doesn't know, is a card game which is kind of like Snap, maybe, but with lots of extra complicated rules and very hilarious pictures of kittens on the cards.
your reference made no sense.
Didn't it?
No, maybe to the Australian audience, but that's
No?
an
You did.
American.
You mean Snap?
No, I don't know what
What do
that
you,
is.
yeah,
It's
what do you call it?
it's just where you
Nap.
you deal out cards, and if they're the same one, you put your hand on it and say Snap.
No,
Never?
I don't
Weird.
know. No. Um,
That's
you
insane.
know what? We're gonna.
Never heard of this game.
You know what exploding kittens is like?
Mm.
Uno.
Run away.
I
I
haven't
It's
yes,
like
played it.
Uno.
that's probably a better example.
Any, anyways, I really enjoyed that reference and the fact that you have the cat come in and spoilers alert, you guys, if you couldn't figure that out by this by any of our conversations, we spoil all the things. Okay, we spoil everything.
Yep.
The fact that the cat that they think is going to kill them because if it stops purring, it's going to explode, just like the board or the card game told them it would.
Yep.
It ends up being that it was cats that killed all the humans.
Mm.
And like suddenly the cat's talking. It's like, what? What?
Yeah.
Okay.
So in a
He's
way,
like,
And
they
then
were
it,
you're
kind
not
of
gonna
right.
explode if we stop petting you, are you? Well,
yeah.
I didn't say that. You better keep petting me just to be sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was funny.
Yeah.
Uh,
So this one was quite entertaining in for almost exactly the opposite reasons, I would say.
yes.
Except that the plots were both, you know, quite complete. That's the
Mhm.
main thing that was similar. So
Yeah.
obviously, as you guys have pointed out, the humor was quite good. Um, and then the other thing, surprisingly, for having three robots, one of which is a pyramid, um, they were very
She was
relatable.
the funniest. She was the funniest.
Yeah, her
The
character
tea
was.
bagging. You don't want to look up that. You don't do it. Don't do it. I told you not to do it. I
Yep,
told you not to do it. My eyes.
Yeah.
It's been burned into my circuits.
yep, yep. So that was quite good for that one. And then yeah, the
Oh, I just realized the rating system, like the order on IMDb, has
mm,
nothing to do with like the it has a season one, season
oh,
two, whatever, but it's also almost in ranking order, nearly
if
like
it,
Hmm.
number of stars,
it's a
at
little bit
least
out
for
of
the
order.
first. Yes, it's a little bit, but like the first one, two, three, four,
Hmm.
five,
I think
five.
that's probably just because they chose like the good ones to show off first, so people will watch the
Ah,
show.
I
You
suppose. I suppose.
know. um.
So,
Yeah.
So
anyways,
what sort of narrative lessons. I use the word narrative entirely too much. Uh,
uh,
what sort of writing lessons do you think we can take from, or
I th-
examinations that we can make from?
Mm.
I think Sunny's Edge is a good horror one, honestly. A good
Yeah.
a good one when it comes to what you see isn't the truth
What
and
you see
how
isn't
to
what you get.
Yeah.
yeah, yes. Whereas like Three Robots, I think Three Robots is a great example of very honestly very subtle humor.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the jokes in there that's where the jokes work so well because they're the exploding kittens is a very specific one, but a lot of the other ones are very generic things.
Yep.
And what's really funny too is that like with the basketball scene, if you have someone who has no idea what basketball is, they're going to
Mm.
be like, what do I do with this? what's the what's the point of this? And I think it's a very relatable one in that sense of it breaks a lot of stuff down to the very basics,
Yep.
um, while still playing really hard into that science fiction category.
Yeah.
And I think one of the big things with all of these that is a common thing with short stories is short stories are a great way and place to subvert your expectations
Mm.
and really play with what you think your audience is going to expect.
Hmm. I
Yeah.
guess so. I
You know what I also
At
thought
least
was
of the ones that I've watched.
no,
So,
it's
what I also thought was funny about that one was that he rears the basketball back,
yeah.
and you're
I was about
expecting
to bring
because
that
he's a
up.
robot that he's about to like, just bounce it through the fuck,
yeah.
bounce it through the atmosphere. But
Good save.
he just like stops and he gently lets it fall.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the interesting thing about that is that it proves that there was some changes or decision making from the people animating it from the original story, because I look, it's possible, but I doubt that that kind of joke was in the written version. Well, I'll say it again. He swings his arms back way behind his head as if he's going to throw it as hard as he can, and then he does half of that motion and then stops in front of him and then just lets go. And so it sets up the, like what Rob was saying, throwing it into the atmosphere, but then pays off a different thing instead, where he just drops it.
Yeah.
And I can't see that being that working in writing, so it kind of proves that there was some creative liberties taken.
Yeah.
Maybe. I have no frame of reference.
Yeah, I think honestly it might have to be um
Mm.
we'd have to go and either, rent or buy the anthology to read that short
Yeah, that
story.
could be an interesting follow-up we could do. But the reason I phrased it that way is because Sam, you brought up sticking to the original as a pro for Sonny's Edge.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
And another point is that some of the stories that I didn't like as much and seem to have been reviewed a little bit less well on IMDb are ones that are almost just like a backdrop to the story. For example, I don't know if you've watched this one yet, Sam. When Yogurt took over.
Not yet, but it is another John Scalzi, just like Three Robots.
Yep.
Um,
It's written by John Scalzi, so the writing is quite well. It's the quality is obviously high, and the comedy is pretty good too. But the visuals are entirely just representing the narration. It starts as narration and ends as narration with no characters or dialogue in between. So although the animation was very good and the story was fairly good, it was it was basically just an audiobook, so some of what you were expecting didn't really get paid off too well. And I think that one could have benefited from the animators or directors, whatever, taking a little bit more liberty, maybe adding a few scenes or something.
Yeah, and I am looking at Scalzi's blog that he posted, because so he has 3 episodes: Three Robots, Alternate Histories, and Yogurt. And one of the things
did he
that he
do Three
actually
Robots as well?
Yep, he did.
Okay, that explains it.
Yeah, Scalzi and his humor. I love Scalzi's humor.
I have watched Alternate Histories as well, and I think it's closer to the Yogurt quality. It's not quite as good as Three Robots. Yeah.
Well, and one of the things that he makes up is, or not makes, but he discusses is that most of what he wrote in his stories made it into the scripts. And that the difference is the things they added were made it, as you're talking about, made the difference between an animated short and a written short story.
Yep.
So
yeah.
that being said, guys, this is a little like a warning of we might want to start wrapping up here.
How come?
I'm just looking at the time.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure.
How much time do you have? 5, 10 minutes.
I get like 10 minutes, 10-minute warning.
All right.
I'm flashing a 10 at my non-existent video camera.
Okay.
Well,
so
you guys did watch another one in common we could talk about. Otherwise, we could talk about something else.
I am up for that. What was the other? Oh yeah, Ice Age. Ice Age. Okay. So Rob and I were discussing this while I was watching it, and he was ahead of me while I was watching it.
Oh yeah.
The fact that this is the only one that we've seen so far where it has live actors, and then the animation is what happens in the freezer.
yeah.
The the werewolf one, Shapeshifters, is high enough quality that it looks like real people. I would say it's
Mhm.
it's possibly even better than Sunny's Edge.
Yes, excellent. The werewolf one is
Yeah,
already set up to be my favorite.
and
Excellent.
yeah, and Lucky
Oh,
13 is uh I couldn't tell if they were real humans or not, but they could have been
Well,
animated.
and like Rob and I were having a conversation because we both recognize those actors, right?
Yeah,
yeah.
And the conversation was, man, well that they could be animated, like maybe. And then Rob was the one to point out, but no, it's clearly they're live, and the animation is what's in the freezer.
yeah, yeah,
So
Yeah, once you see the animation, you
yeah,
realize like, oh, okay, these have to be. There's no way that you would like purposefully make such photorealistic CGI and then just go to, you know, it was
low
decent
quality.
animation,
Yeah,
but
okay, it was
compared
still
to
it was still
reality, it was
it was still
clearly,
it was still very good animation. Like it was still very good.
yeah,
I am kind of excited to watch the ones that are more traditional, like drawn styles or cartoon or animation styles.
yeah.
mm.
But, but yeah,
You know,
no, I liked it. This is one that I had read the short story version of it, and I think
Oh
they
yeah.
did a very good job
Do
with
you
it.
have a preference on which one you think was better?
So it's been a long time since I read the short story. Like as soon as they opened the freezer, I remembered it.
Yep.
Um, I think. Hmm, I think they're both good on their own. I don't as far as like a preference now would be the visual because it's short and it's beautiful, to watch. It's one of those
Yeah,
really
it is quite
interesting things
nice.
to watch. But as far as the short story goes, the way that that short story is written, because we read it in a writing class or an English class at one point in time,
Yep.
and the way it's written is really interesting because you're having to get this idea across. And kind of one of the things I remember about it was in that short story, there's no details about the house they're in. There's no
Mm.
details about really when it is, other than, they have a freezer.
Yep.
Um, but most of the details go into what this little civilization is doing in
Yep.
their freezer.
Yeah,
So,
that was one thing I thought was a bit strange. I guess we could give a quick synopsis. I have a little screenshot here that says most of it, but they find a civilization in their freezer, and which is
mhm,
progressing at thousands of times normal speed, so that
mhm,
the whole civilization is over within 24 hours roughly,
mhm.
including crazy sci-fi stuff.
Yep.
Um, the one thing I thought was a little bit strange and took me a little while to get over was how casually they were treating this. They 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 almost treat it like there's something interesting on TV. When there's
Yes.
an entire civilization in their fridge.
And that actually was a thing that I think was consistent between the short story and the short,
mm,
because, and I vaguely remember commenting on that about like, wouldn't you be freaking out? Well, you open it, it's there, you open it again, and suddenly they've changed time periods. Like, is it even worth running? And I think it's set in a time where I think like 80s or 90s, I think is kind of where it's set, where you don't have
mm,
internet access. You don't have, everyone doesn't have phones. They don't have all have cameras. Like,
mm,
and I think too, if I remember right, and this is where I think the episode kind of fell short, is I think in the short story they kind of set it up that they didn't have a lot of money, that they weren't like really well off people.
mm.
Um, and I think that they were kind of busy too,
Right.
um,
well,
or something like that. Like
I thought,
there was a little bit more to it that kind of helped to explain why they're just, you know, watching what's going on.
Right.
I thought that blase aspect of it added to the humor.
Hmm.
Yeah,
I mean,
I would
I mean
agree.
to say that I thought it was intentional.
Hmm.
Uh,
I think the bit where they go where they're husband. do they think that we're gods? And the wife's like, no. And then they went into one of the characters like, God, we keep having to look at their faces all day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that. And yeah, I think it was one where even though you have, the ending and the wars and everything, it still kept a very light feel throughout it,
Mm.
Well,
which was
there was
nice.
some evidence of like I guess you could say
5 minute
fascination down
warning.
to the emotional level because when the when the husband gets like when a bomb explodes in his face
Yeah.
and he's just like sitting there like let's just let them do their thing, and he's kind of
Yeah.
like sitting there
I like the sunburn
he's like
also
all
he got.
moody.
Like I like that touch.
Very silly.
He was sitting there kind of moody like, hmm, do you think they're still alive?
Mhm.
It's been an hour. And she's like, I don't know. Let's go see. Well, he's like, oh, all right, let's go see then.
Yeah.
Also, at that same scene, I did notice some commonality between that and Three Robots, in that the both of them referred to a structure of some kind as being phallic, which is funny.
Yes.
It's like kind of phallic, isn't it? Yeah, it looks like a dildo.
Yeah. They were very
Yeah.
explicit about that, weren't they?
It
Yeah.
is this show is not a show for children. Yeah,
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
small
I mean,
children.
it
Which
does
this
have.
also this podcast isn't for kids either. So
Two of the episodes I watched had animated boobs,
Mm.
which
Lucky
we're
was
gonna.
you, eh?
it was
I'm gonna stop that conversation right there.
no, I'm saying that it felt a little unnecessary,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
especially in the yogurt one. I was just like,
Mm.
why is that there?
I don't remember
Well,
that at
that's the
all.
thing I get to look forward to, I guess.
It's like, just
Uh,
remember that this show isn't for kids.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, okay,
I
thank
mean, the anthology is called uh, Love, Death, Robots, I
yeah.
guess they want
Yeah.
to put in a token to the love part.
Yeah.
you. No,
Uh,
it was
I mean,
funny.
honestly, they could have just done like Death and Robots, and I would have been entertained.
Yeah, I think most of the shorts that fits about as well, honestly. There isn't too much just love on its own. Although each of them do have kind of some nod to it at the least, I would
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, excellent recommendation, Jake.
Thank you.
Excellent.
It's
Excellent.
at the very least, it's good to discuss for writing,
Yes.
because I think you guys have watched some of the best ones first, so it'll probably start going downhill a little bit.
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay, so
I don't know if I'll watch all of them.
Oh no, no. Oh, okay then.
Oh,
It's
I'm
too.
gonna probably watch all of them.
You told me that there's bad ones. I don't want
Yeah,
to
but they're
accidentally stumble
He's-
across a bad
I
one.
bad
think
ones are more
he means
interesting to talk
lesser.
about. Yeah.
Do you mean lesser, maybe, or do you mean actual bad ones?
Well, none of them are bad, I would say. Like the
Okay.
lowest
Yeah.
on IMDb is 6.3, and I
Okay.
actually enjoyed that one quite a bit. But yeah, these ones have the most complete stories, the best animation. They have some other aspect that they've done really well, like the
Mhm.
comedy or the kind of suspense. Like I don't know exactly how you describe it for Sunny's Edge. But,
But still, they're quite
yeah,
good.
and the other ones just don't have one of those aspects done really well. They either average or they just did the basics.
Mm. I watched the werewolf one since
Yeah, we're definitely talking about that one at some point.
Not yet. No spoilers. No
I
spoilers.
haven't seen it. I'm
Oh,
going
you
to watch
haven't seen it. I thought you said you had seen it. I was like, no.
Uh,
No.
it. No, no.
Just wondering why you're
Okay.
rushing. Oh man.
So, guys, it's
Yeah.
been fun.
Yeah.
Yes.
Uh,
And
Sam,
for everyone listening,
Samuel
please.
has to go.
Yes, I do. But everyone who's listening, thank you for making it this far. I think this one's going to be what, an hour-ish?
Yep.
Something like that. All right.
Yeah,
So
5 minutes.
what the shortest one so far.
And the
But
best one.
please Yes. Please subscribe, leave a review, comment, ring the bell, do all the things. If you're listening to us on SoundCloud, welcome.
Awesome. All right.
And yes. So thank you very much for taking the time to listen to a conversation between the three of us.
Yep.
So,
Catch you all next time.
yeah. Bye.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.